Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
His biggest statement since he began the war, that he still won't call a war, delayed 12 hours till this morning, and perhaps less drastic than feared. But still a huge move by Vladimir Putin, who until now used this sort of volunteer recruitment process, declaring the first forced mobilization in Russia, even if it is partial, since World War II.
I repeat, we are talking only about partial mobilization. In other words, only military reservists, primarily those who served in the armed forces and have specific military occupational specialities and corresponding experience, will be called up.
And behind it all, the nuclear threat. Falsely claiming the West had threatened Russia, and so Russia would use everything it had to defend its territorial integrity.
This is not a bluff. The citizens of Russia can be sure that the territorial integrity of our homeland, our independence and freedom will be ensured. I emphasize this again, with all the means at our disposal. And those who try to blackmail us with nuclear weapons should know that the prevailing winds can turn in their direction.
The mobilization is a huge undertaking, analysts said, when they've already failed to supply, equip and effectively deploy their regular army over the past 6 months. It will not be quick.
300,000 reservists will be called up. I want to say straight away that this work will not be carried out as a one-off, but in a systematic, planned manner, as I've already said.
Unease already palpable on Moscow's streets, even if protest was, as usual, muted and suppressed. You always feel worried in moments like this, he said, because you have a wife and kids, and you think about that. I would not want to leave them in case something happens. The big question, amid all the rhetoric and threats of escalation, is does this change matters on the ground? Still, Ukraine pushes forwards despite slight Russian gains around Bakhmut. Russia still struggles to match its status as a nuclear power with real progress and strategy on the ground. Putin's bid to appear strong, perhaps a reminder of how weak this war of choice has left him. Wolf, we are into a breakneck week likely here in Ukraine. Russia having called through its proxies in the region, freshly occupied areas, for 4 separate referenda, which will essentially by early next week probably come up with a very positive figure suggesting that even though these votes, sham votes as they are, were held under war zone conditions, under military occupation, that people living there want to be part of Russia. That may then cause Moscow to say that these occupied areas of Ukraine, they essentially recognise as part of the Russian Federation. That puts a lot of pressure on Ukraine in the coming week to possibly make some kind of territorial advances here to try and disrupt this sham voting process, perhaps. But fundamentally, what we heard today was Moscow trying to recontrol the narrative that slipped out of its hands after extraordinary Ukrainian advances over the past weeks, but probably essentially reminding people how far they've slipped over the past weeks. Wolf?
Nick Paton Walsh for us in Kramatorsk in Ukraine. Nick, thank you very, very much. Stay safe over there. Right now, I want to bring back CNN's Caitlin Collins. She's over at the United Nations, along with CNN's chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto. Retired U.S. Army General Wesley Clark. He's the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He's now a CNN military analyst. And the former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. Jim Sciutto, let me start with you. The Ukrainian President Zelensky's very forceful speech just delivered before the United Nations General Assembly. He's demanding Russia be punished for its aggression against Ukraine. What did you make of his remarks?
It's not the first time he's demanded consequences for the Russian leader from the international community, but it's notable to me, coupled with Ukraine's rapid advance in its counteroffensive in the north, that the calculus has changed in this war, that he is now looking ahead to a point where not only does Russia not win in Ukraine, that Russia loses in Ukraine, Ukraine successfully defends its territory, but that Russia then faces consequences for it beyond the loss of its strategic objectives. You've heard that from U.S. officials, European officials, NATO officials, that Russia has already lost its strategic aims in Ukraine. And you see the Ukrainian president here, perhaps emboldened by military successes on the ground, as well as international support, to be able to gaze into the future, and that may be months or even years, given Russia's mobilization before the war is over, but to gaze into the future and say, he needs to pay for this, right? So that this does not happen again, either by Putin or other leaders who think they can get away with territorial expansionism at the end of a gun.
Very strong remarks from President Zelensky. Indeed. General Clark, let me get your reaction, because President Zelensky's speech comes after this very significant escalation from the Russian President Putin today. Is the Russian leader, from your perspective, growing increasingly desperate right now, perhaps increasingly dangerous at the same time?
Well, yes, he is desperate, and there's always been some risk of his use of nuclear weapons. But the 300,000 mobilization, that's a problem for months, and he doesn't have the equipment for them in any case when they're mobilized. So that's really what he's covering up when he threatens with nuclear weapons. He knows that use of nuclear weapons is not going to end this conflict for him. It's going to deepen the conflict. But he's after the shock effect of the threat. He's after trying to deter nations sitting on the sideline from coming in against him, and he wants to weaken the Western resolve to assist Ukraine. And conversely, what he's doing is going to strengthen Western resolve and probably accelerate the flow of Western armaments to Ukraine.
Yeah.
So once again, he's getting exactly the opposite of what he's seeking.
I suspect you are absolutely right. Ambassador Taylor, President Biden today reiterated that U.S. support for Ukraine, in his word, is unwavering. During his speech at the UN today, how important was it for Ukraine and for the world, for that matter, to hear that message so loudly and so clearly coming from the President of the United States?
Wolf, it's very important that the Ukrainians hear that. They know that the United States is with them. They know the United States has been the main supplier of the weapons that General Clark just talked about. They know that that has been decisive in their success in these counteroffensives, in particular around Kharkiv. So the Ukrainians know the value of the U.S. support, and to hear President Biden require that and confirm that and reassert that is very good for the Ukrainian morale.
Certainly is. You know, Caitlin, you're there at the UN. You're reporting that the Biden administration was not necessarily entirely surprised by Russia's bold announcements today. How did that influence the president's remarks at the General Assembly?
Yeah, they weren't really that caught off guard, Wolf, and you could kind of get that sense since you saw the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, come out yesterday. He talked about these sham referenda that they have been concerned about and saying, you know, this is something that we believe is in Russia's playbook and is something that they are going to do. So it didn't amount to this big rewriting of the speech today after President Putin had spoken and talked about mobilizing these forces. They didn't know how many it was going to be and what he was going to call for, but they knew this was something that was an option for him. I think two things to watch, Wolf, is, you know, the nuclear comments that President Putin made. The White House has kind of been downplaying that, saying, you know, we haven't seen any action behind the scenes to match the rhetoric publicly yet. But of course, when it comes to, you know, what Putin's next moves are going to be, that's something they're watching, because he is clearly realizing at home just how bad his situation is and how it's not going in the direction that he wanted.
Yep, it's not going in his direction at all.